Because schizophrenia, like many mental health disorders, are on a spectrum, are there some people with schizophrenia on the lower end that could just get away with some therapy and some peer support groups? When it comes to treating schizophrenia, what are the options?
All right, treatment of schizophrenia is a combination of coping skills, life skills. This is so important. I'm going to this first because I think a lot of people jump right to those medicines. But people with schizophrenia are having a hard time navigating their life because of all of these really, really troublesome symptoms, right? We talked about the disorganized thought and hallucinations and delusional thinking. So life coping skills, good family and provider support, good follow-up with your therapist and your doctor are going to be paramount. That's the foundation, okay? Now, psychosis from schizophrenia is very likely going to need a medication. And the mainstay of treatment, aside from the foundation that I just talked about, is going to be the class of medicines called the antipsychotics, right? So pretty self-explanatory. Now, the scientific basis for the antipsychotics is blocking dopamine in the brain.
Right.
Okay? Because again, we know through research and years of experience that too much dopamine in certain areas of the brain will give you the positive symptoms of psychosis. And our job at this point is to reduce those delusions, reduce those hallucinations, slow down that brain so you can function at a relatively normal level and live a pretty good life. So in the 1950s, we like me, and it certainly wasn't me, but doctors came out with the first generation antipsychotics. And I want people to understand the terminology because your doctor may say this to you. Sometimes they're called FGAs, first generation antipsychotics. This is the group of antipsychotics that people might hear these names: Haldol, haloperidol, flufenazine or Prolixin, Thorazine or chlorpromazine, okay? These are the first generation antipsychotics, old, been around 1950s, okay? Very strong dopamine blockers, all right? What ended up happening over time that when we found that when you treat people with these very strong dopamine blockers, that people started getting Parkinsonian type symptoms. They started having movement disorders. They started getting tremors. They started getting akathisia, restlessness, where they couldn't stop moving in a very Parkinsonian way. It was like, oh my goodness, what are we giving these people? Parkinson's, right? We're reducing their psychosis, but they're having these movement disorders. And of course, now we know that we're blocking dopamine in areas of the brain that deal with movement, just like Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, we don't have the science to be so specific as to where we block the dopamine, right? So it's kind of a blanket treatment in the brain, and unfortunately that had consequences. Now that's the first generation antipsychotics. So what we have now are the second generation antipsychotics, or SGAs. Now people are going to hear these names: Seroquel, right, or quetiapine, risperidone or Risperdal, Zyprexa. They're going to hear Geodon, Latuda, Rexulti, right? These are some of the newer ones that you may hear from your doctor, your prescriber. These are the second generation antipsychotics. Now, what makes these different is clinicians and researchers and pharmacologists were trying to figure out a way to treat schizophrenia without all the negative side effects of those first generation. Let's try to block dopamine in a more specific way, and let's play with some other receptors too, like serotonin, for example. And this gets really complicated, but I want to keep it as simple as possible. But we do know that there are certain serotonin receptors that modulate dopamine too, okay? All right, without getting too complicated. So certain second generation antipsychotics also modulate serotonin, but in a way that affects dopamine, okay? In a good way. The second generation antipsychotics have less of that Parkinsonian EPX, we call it extrapyramidal symptoms, dystonia, tardive dyskinesia, which you guys may have heard of, or TD. Tardive dyskinesia is actually when you've been treated with these antipsychotics for such a long time period, you develop irreversible Parkinsonian-like effects, and that could be tremor, it could be oral movements, lip smacking, tongue movements, and unfortunately that can be irreversible.
If you have dopamine blockers though, wouldn't you just be so depressed because you have no dopamine in your body?
Yeah, and that's an important side effect of some of these drugs, and that has been a problem with treating schizophrenia, because we're blocking you hit on something so brilliant, and that was so insightful of you, is that we're blocking dopamine to get rid of the delusions and the hallucinations and that disorganized thinking, but the people are feeling blunted and flat.
Right.
Flat.
Right.
And you say to yourself, they're just kind of shuffling around. Are they really feeling good? And they're not. They're not feeling good. They feel flat and blunted. And that was a lot of the complaint with the first generation antipsychotics. They were such strong dopamine blockers. So with the newer ones, the second generations, some of them are actually developed, like Abilify, for example, was developed as a partial agonist antagonist. And I know that's scientific jargon, but it's just less dopamine blockade. So people get less of that blunted, flat feeling. And also working on serotonin a little bit to maybe help with the mood aspects of things, right? So there's more going on with the second generation antipsychotics in the brain. They're not just strong dopamine blockers. We're seeing less tardive dyskinesia and Parkinsonian stuff with them. However, it's an ongoing, very challenging process because those medications also have issues. The second generation antipsychotics can cause something called metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is high blood sugar, increased cholesterol, and increased body weight. So, we always, and a provider should be doing this, and if you're being treated or your family member is being treated with a second generation antipsychotic, be sure that they're either following with their primary care doctor or the psychiatrist is ordering a lipid panel, which is cholesterol, right? And monitoring their blood sugars as well. Okay, because they end up with this metabolic syndrome, which has consequences of its own, right? So the mainstay of treatment is going to be the medications blocking the dopamine, an antipsychotic, combined with the social support, the family education, the peer support, the group support, life skills, coping skills, identifying stressors, identifying triggers. All of that is all-encompassing in treating schizophrenia.
Because schizophrenia, like many mental health disorders, are on a spectrum, are there some people with schizophrenia on the lower end that could just get away with some therapy and some peer support groups?
If you like psychology and learning about mental health and want to learn more while meeting other people who are interested, explore your membership options using the link below this video or visit MedCircle.com.
Now, there are people that so when you look back at statistics and epidemiology, they're not great numbers, but still positive in a way. 10% of people with schizophrenia can live a relatively normal life.
With no meds or on meds?
Well, with meds, management, maybe just some intervention.
All right.
Right? But another scary statistic is that 50% of people that have schizophrenia get zero treatment. Zero.
Why is that, do you think?
Because the population of, I think having schizophrenia is just such a challenging circumstance that they're not likely to seek treatment independently. They're not because they have no insight into it.
You know what? I just had a really big moment right now. If I was walking down the street and a woman came up to me and she said, "I am so depressed. I think I'm going to kill myself. Can you help me?" I would say yes. I'd get out my phone. I'd call 911. I'd wait with her. She'd go to the emergency room and hopefully she got help. If a woman came up to me and said, "Are you the King of England?" and was exhibiting symptoms of schizophrenia, I would move around that person and continue on with my day. Now, both people gave clear signs of a mental health disorder that can be treated, and one I would help and one I would ignore.
It's such a profound insight, Kyle, and I think that's the stigma, is we're afraid of it. We see it, and I don't know what would go through your mind, right? But crazy.
Yeah.
They're just crazy.
Yeah, or
just
on
crazy.
A drug trip or whatever.
Yeah, so
and maybe they are on a drug trip or whatever.
Hopeless.
But, yep.
Not going to help this person anyway.
Not worth it.
Right? Which is so sad because it's treatable.
Yes.
It's treatable. It's a treatable thing, but that's such a huge insight, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's true. How many times have we walked past a homeless guy mumbling to themselves? it's probably schizophrenia, because unfortunately a lot of people with schizophrenia end up homeless.
That's right.
Because they can't support themselves. They can't hold down a job. Right. Their family doesn't want them.
Right.
Right? So it's really sad. So 50% don't get treatment for all of the reasons we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But it is treatable. Mm-hmm. 10% do relatively well. A modest amount of them. I've seen statistics out of Europe that almost 3 out of 5 can respond to treatment in a really beneficial way. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's treatable.
Yes.
It's treatable.
So for the supporters out there who are working with their loved one to make sure they're as compliant as possible with the treatment regimen that their mental health team has put together, what does improvement look like for that person with schizophrenia?
That's a good question. And one quick thing I want to touch on is being a family support, and we emphasize this all the time, but I'm telling you with schizophrenia, it's a big one. Mm-hmm. When they don't have peer support, social support, family support, they always do worse, right? They always do worse. It's much easier for them to derail. Mm-hmm. And schizophrenia has a very low compliance rate with medications. Mm-hmm. They tend to stop taking their medicines very easily, very quickly, because of the thought disorder. Remember, if you're disorganized in your thinking, how can you remember to take a pill?
Oh,
if you're paranoid,
I barely remember right now.
If you're paranoid that the doctor is giving you medicine that's poison, and that voice inside your head is saying, "Don't take that. Mm-hmm. Don't you take that pill. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Don't. They're gonna lock you back up. They think you're crazy. You're not crazy." Mm-hmm. Right? So compliance is an issue. And just jump back to treatment real quick, which is an important topic. I want caregivers and families to know that there is an option for long-term injectables. This is an antipsychotic that is an intramuscular injection that can last anywhere from a few weeks to a month without having to take any oral daily medicines.
Great.
All right, so I just want people to know about that. Maybe you should ask your provider about that if your loved one is not following a regimen. Say, I've heard about these injectables. What's the story? At least visit that, okay? What does improvement look like? Your question, what does improvement look like? Well, working in the psychiatric emergency department, I see people acutely ill. They're coming to the ER for a reason, right? And in the psychiatric ER, they're coming to the ER because they're out of control, because their psychiatric illness is really exacerbated. Mm-hmm. So I see the acute psychosis. I see the delusions and the hallucinations and the paranoia and the disorganized thinking. And it's really good to see that we'll get them back in the hospital because they're not safe to be home, because they can't really take care of themselves. We'll get them back on their antipsychotic regimen, and sometimes really just after a few days of getting back on their regimen, you just see that extreme psychosis just start to come down. Their feet kind of come back down to reality. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's such a nice thing to see. Mm-hmm. And, and I'll follow up with them in the hospital. Sometimes I'll cover the ER, and then I'll cover the inpatient unit, and I'll have a conversation just like you and I are talking right now. And it's just so nice to see. So the treatments do work, and sometimes it takes a couple of days, sometimes it takes months. And remember, viewers and you, Kyle, psychiatric treatment, some people have used the term the Goldilocks effect, right? What's just right for you might not be just right for the other person. Like Goldilocks, right? She tries out all the beds.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So we call it the Goldilocks effect because certain people respond to certain things differently, obviously, and we don't really have a solid understanding as to who's going to respond to what. So don't get frustrated if you have to try a few different medicines before you have that Goldilocks cocktail of medicines, at least, that are really going to take care of that, symptom complex.
Final thoughts on treatment.
I want people to remember that this is absolutely treatable.
Yes.
I want people to remember to not be afraid when you see family or loved ones experiencing this. Don't be afraid. Identify the symptoms, get help, start with your primary care doc if that's your only avenue. Mm-hmm. But there is help out there. There are plenty of resources out there. If you're a supporter, there's plenty of resources for you.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in our next session.
Right,
too.
So, and don't get frustrated with the treatment, because remember that Goldilocks principle, that first few trials of the medicine might not be right for you.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you, because I realized that maybe unbiasedly, I even was holding a stigma against the people that we meet day in and day out, and how we're unbiasedly treating one over the other, or at least myself. And so I'm really going to take that with me from this series, so that I can, practice what we preach here. You can't just say it, you gotta do it. I'm gonna do it. We're going to do more too in our next session, where we talk about long-term management strategies, both for someone with schizophrenia, but of course also for you, the supporter.